This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
Hello and welcome to Voices Unhindered. I'm Crystal Jenkinson. On this show, I give a unique perspective and listening ear to voices that often go unheard. I want everyone to know that you are not alone and that your voice and story matters. On this week's episode of Voices Unhindered, I chat with the founder and operator of Pedalmania, Clive Murphy, about how he started his mobile crazy bike business and how he uses his giftings as the foundation of his successful business. What is Pedalmania for those who don't know?
Pedalmania is an entertainment service that I offer to the general public. It's a whole lot of crazy bikes, and when I say crazy bikes, I mean hand cycles, choppers, bikes that have oval back wheels and all sorts of odd stuff in lots of different sizes that both adults and kids can ride.
What are choppers?
Choppers are the ones with the big long forks where you sit up and they put you quite high off the ground, a bit like a chopper motorbike, big long forks and pedals.
Did you make all of these yourself?
I made most of them myself. I had a few bikes at a factory, like I've got some factory tandems, and I also bring a wheelchair with me because that's another thing that kids love to ride.
Is it some of the bikes you have made for the disabled?
I have hand cycles, and at home I have a few collections of different bikes. One of the events that I do every year is for the disabled people's games. They get a whole pile of children with disabilities together and they provide entertainment for them, and I'm one of the things they use as entertainment.
And how did you start Pedalmania? What inspired you?
I used to operate a mini golf course years ago, and I used to have some big parties for my friends where they would come out and camp in the domain, and we'd play mini golf and sit around the fire and have a few drinks, and they'd camp overnight. After several of these, one of my friends turned up with a couple of old push bikes and asked me to build them a tandem because I'm quite handy with my hands building stuff. They said, look, we want to ride the 2-minute walk to the toilets. So my first ride was behind one of my friends who was 6'3" and she'd had a couple of bottles of wine. And I was sitting on the back going really fast at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking, this is great, we need another one so we can have races. So what I did was I built a second one, and the last party that I had out there, I was cleaning up and they had them sitting beside my mini golf course kiosk where I let people use clubs and balls and what have you. And I had some customers went out and they played mini golf and then came back and asked if they could hire the tandems that were sitting there, a family with a couple of adults and a couple of kids. So a little light went off inside my head and I thought maybe if I have a few more crazy bikes, they'd be a really good add-on to my mini golf business. And after about 2 years and about 25 crazy bikes with sidecars and bits and pieces, then they were doing almost as much as the mini golf.
How did you accumulate all these different bikes?
I bought a couple of bulk lots off Trade Me with maybe 20 bikes for $100. There are guys out there that collect bikes when they go around and do scrap steel and put them up for sale on Trade Me.
And do you have a background in manufacturing?
Yes, but I don't have any qualifications. I started out life doing a biology BSc, and I've got half a degree studying biology and entomology. When I dropped out of university, one of my student job search jobs was working in a factory. So I went and saw them and said, hey, look, I'm looking for a job. Can I start here and earn some money in the meantime?
That's cool. What kind of factory was it?
It was a large manufacturing company that made foam, plastic, fibre products and eventually polystyrene. So I started out sweeping the floor in one of the areas there and ended up managing a division of it.
How did you learn most of your skills in manufacturing? You say you don't have a qualification. Did it just come naturally?
Well, since I was about 7 or 8, I've been pulling stuff apart and putting it back together. Most of the time it works when I'm finished with it. And then I got into buying cars and motorbikes, and what happened is I couldn't afford to pay someone to fix them, so I fixed them. Then I started looking after my parents' car and helping my dad build a boat and doing a few other bits and pieces. And so, yeah, I'm very much a jack of all trades.
How many bikes roughly do you own and where do you keep them all?
When I go out to events, my trailer of bikes seats about 45 people. So there's some bikes in there that seat 4 people and some that seat 3 or 4. And I have 2 sets of bikes that go out to events, so that's about 100 bikes. Then I have a 9 by 6 metre shed on my property that has about 200 bikes and bits and pieces. One of the benefits of my job is that everywhere I go, people give me push bikes because they love the idea of the old bikes being used for the bikes that I build up. So I'm also lucky in the fact that my next door neighbour does scrap metal and he gives me a lot of bikes, but I also give him all my old bits and pieces as well. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, you said you finished half a degree at university. Do you regret not finishing your degree, or are you happy with where you are today?
I'm very happy with where I am today. What I was studying was entomology, which is what I thought I wanted to get into. What I'm really good at is maths and engineering.
Did you know that then?
Not really, but I also have quite good people management skills.
It's funny because some people are either good at one or the other, but like you said, you have both. I can see that you had both when I saw you interacting with the children. And
yeah, part of that is I spent a lot of time as a youngster involved in Rotaract Club, which is like a junior version of Rotary. And I've always been one of those people that's organising lots of events for my friends. Frequently, I'm the hub that pulls a whole pile of people together to do stuff.
Did you have any role models growing up?
Both my parents were awesome. They were both English. I always had a really, really good rapport with my parents. They're both dead now. But I've always had lots of people around me that are motivated, well organised and active. And having a mixture of people like that means that it's a lot easier to go out and do things because I say, hey, look, I'm going to do this. Does anybody want to come? And you always get a big crowd.
And what age did you start your business, Pedalmania?
I did 20 years working for the manufacturing company and semi-retired the day before I turned 40. I spent about 10 years running my mini golf course. And then Pedalmania started pretty soon after the earthquakes.
What was the earthquakes something to do with you wanting to start this business?
What happened was when the earthquakes came along in Christchurch, all the people that had homes that were not in the best conditions stopped spending their money on entertainment. Because they weren't certain about their future, all my friends that work in pubs, cinemas, bars, racing cars, all the things that you go out and do, everybody stopped spending money on that, which meant that my business as a mini golf course wasn't a viable option. So after 3 months of making losses, I shut it down because I'd been doing it for about 10 years at that stage. At that stage, I had about 30 bikes, so I loaded them up and took them home and put them in my shed, knowing what I'd use them for in the future, and literally closed the mini golf course down.
Where was this golf course?
Out at a place called Stewart's Gully. It's was the oldest grass course in New Zealand. So when I say a mini golf course, it was like real golf, but 4 sets of 18 putting greens on about probably 7 or 8 hectares of land. So I spent a lot of time maintaining the area. After the earthquakes, what happened was I started getting phone calls from the holiday programs that I'd been dealing with. So I used to get holiday programs come and visit my mini golf, and I'd do them a set rate for playing mini golf and then riding my bikes. And in the end, what they wanted to do was come and ride the bikes, even though I didn't have the mini golf course. And the business started basically because one of the holiday programs rang me up and they said, hey, look, we'd really like to come and ride your bikes. And I said, sorry, I don't have the land anymore. So they said, can you meet us at Spencer Park, which is just down the road? So I thought about it and I said, yes, I can do that. So I took my big trailer off my trailer and cable tied some corrugated iron to it and loaded all the bikes on top, tied them down with a bit of rope and did my first visit. And after my first visit, I got 4 phone calls from other holiday programs who this holiday program talked to and said it's a really good idea. And it doubled every year for the next 5 years. And now I do about 120 events all over the South Island every year.
Wow. do you enjoy most about Pedalmania?
One of my friends summed it up best. He said, you'll never go out of business because you sell fun or you sell happiness. And what I love to see is the adults and the kids riding my bikes with these huge grins, having a really great time. And of course, you know about it because you've been on them, haven't you?
Yeah. I wasn't keen, but then I jumped on. I was like, well, this is fun.
Yeah. People normally take about 20 minutes standing there watching until one brave adult goes, I'm allowed to go as well. And then all of a sudden it all happens and you can't get them off.
If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with the founder and operator of Pedalmania, Clive Murphy, about how his mobile crazy bike business came into being and how he uses his giftings as the foundation of his successful business. Are all your bikes pretty safe, to ride?
They have to be.
Yeah.
What I do was every time I load my bikes onto the trailer, I do a safety check on them. I check the brakes work, I check there's no sharp bits, I check the tyres have been pumped up. So that means that every time I take them out, I check them to make sure they're safe. I'm also pretty good at before I allow them to be ridden. If I have a bit of a party, then my friends will come around and ride them. If they can't break the bikes or hurt themselves, then it's okay for the kids.
That's cool.
Also, of course, coming from a corporate background, all my safety procedures and things that we need for OSH are all up to date as well. And I have all the paperwork available for my customers.
Have you had any accidents yet?
13 years I've been going. I've had one set of stitches, a couple of little stitches, two kids riding past each other managed to squash their fingers between two handlebars. The kid went away, got them stitched up and was back in about 3 hours' time to ride them again. I've had one suspected broken arm where we were at a school and a guy got off his bike, walked backwards into another bike and fell over, and I thought his arm was broken. The teacher thought his arm was broken, but apparently it wasn't. It was just a really bad sprain. He went away and got it fixed. I was quite concerned when I first started, but the kids are surprisingly good, and I keep a very strict eye on speed. And if the kids do anything really stupid, I say, look, if you're going to do that again, I'm going to kick you out. And I kick them out. And once I do that once or twice, most of the kids go, oh, he actually means what he says. That's cool. And so the behaviour gets a lot better faster.
Yeah, I've seen you interact with kids when they're playing up on the bikes and things like that, and you just give them a warning.
I'm a big believer that you don't just say, don't do that. You say, hey, look, you don't do that because of that little girl over there that's riding around on my bikes. I don't want you to run her over. And if you go really fast again, then you're not showing that you're safe and thinking about other people, which means I don't want you riding my bikes.
Yeah. Cool.
If you give them a good reason, and it's really important with kids, they have boundaries, and if they exceed the boundaries, you have to follow through with what you've said you're going to do.
And did you experience boundaries from your parents?
Yes, most definitely. I was quite a good kid, however, I've seen the results with other parents of letting their kids run wild.
And like you said, you've had a lot of experience with children. Is there anywhere else that you've worked with children?
My customers are about maybe 80% kids with my bikes. With my mini golf, it was about 50%. I also deal with a lot of young people. I'm a really keen ice skater, and when I'm meeting a lot of young folk through that as well.
And when did you start ice skating?
I started on my 16th birthday, which was quite a long time ago.
Did you just start at a local ice skating rink? Or?
Yeah, there used to be one down at the end of Colombo Street. And I started skating and really enjoyed it, so I kept going back, and I pretty much haven't stopped.
And what's some of the feedback you've received from different organisations about Pedalmania?
I've had a lot of people. I always remember one of the best ones I got was from Big Brothers. It was a box of chocolates and a nice little note saying, thank you very much. We love the interaction between you and your bikes and our things. Frequently from schools I get thank you letters. One of the things I always suggest when I'm working in schools is that the teachers give the kids the opportunity to design their own crazy bikes. And every now and then I'll get a bunch of 4 or 5 designs for crazy bikes emailed to me, which is always great fun.
Good idea. What are some of the more challenging aspects of running Pedalmania?
Frequently it's dealing with people to organise stuff. I've got events booked in 2026 at the moment, so I can have events booked a long way out. And sometimes people's communication skills with times and dates are not always the best. I work really hard. When someone asks for a booking, I always try and make sure I send them all the information they need.
Do you feel like sometimes the communication's not clear or definite about when?
I get people saying, I'd like to book you on this day. They don't tell me where and they don't tell me when, which are quite critical information when I'm providing a quote for going there and doing stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are some of the future goals you hope to achieve with Pedalmania?
As I'm getting older, I'm not looking to grow it significantly, though it is still growing. The more I build my business, the more it becomes valuable, which means when I'm looking at selling at some stage in the future, it will give me a return for all my hard work.
And what has been the most interesting part of your work so far?
The most interesting part of Pedalmania, probably the people I meet. One of the things I like to do is if all the children are behaving themselves and the adults are not going too fast, I walk around and I talk to people. And the people I meet make a huge difference. They're all really interesting. Why do you think I'm here?
Did you ever envision yourself being an owner of a bicycle company when you were young?
My aim in life has always been to own my own business.
Yeah.
When I semi-retired at 40, I had a list of about 15 different businesses, and this wasn't one of them. And I spent 6 months going through each of those businesses trying to figure out what was the best one to start. And that's when I started my mini golf course, which took me another 6 months to get ready because it was an old disused course when I took it over. I ran it for 10 years and I sort of fell into Pedalmania, but after I'd done maybe 3 or 4 visits, I realised that I was on a winner.
Yeah.
And the more I did it, the better it's got.
And how did you know that you wanted to be a business owner?
20 years working in a factory, working for someone else and making them huge amounts of money and the frustration that goes with working in a bigger company. Everything takes a long time. You can see a lot of potential, but actually poking the machinery of a large company into action to be quick enough to generate that money for the company, it takes too long. Where when you run your own company, the buck stops with me and I can make those decisions immediately.
Yeah. And what were the things that you made when you were a kid?
Like most kids at my age, I had model trains and model aeroplanes and go-karts and bikes, and I helped or hindered my dad while he was building a boat.
Yeah.
That was when I was like 12 or 13. Knowing now what I know, it's a lot faster when you do it on yourself than it is to have someone helping you most of the time.
Oh, yeah. Was that like part of your bonding with your dad?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, no,
That's
my
cool.
parents were really good.
And just a bit about your parents. You said they came from, is it England?
Yes, they emigrated here probably in the late 1950s.
And what did they come here for?
They came because the stories they were hearing about New Zealand were much better than the life they were living in England.
And where did they come from in England?
Dad was a Liverpudlian, Liverpool, and Mum came from Essex.
My granddad came from the East End.
Yeah.
He came for the same reason on a ship, and it took 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I came to New Zealand on a ship. My parents came to New Zealand. They had myself and my sister. And then we went back to England. Parents decided to go back to England to visit home, but we effectively shifted back there because they were missing the family. After 2 weeks in England, when we got back there, they decided they'd made a horrible mistake and that New Zealand was by far a better place to live. And it took them 5 years to save up to come back to New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
So I left New Zealand at 2 and came back at 7. I've been here pretty much ever since.
Do you remember coming and making that trip?
I remember coming back to New Zealand, but I don't remember a lot of the stuff pre that. And yes, it took 6 weeks on an Italian cruise liner.
Whoa. What are some of the projects you're currently working on at home?
At the moment, one of the things I built about a year ago was a tadpole trike. That's 2 wheels at the front and a tadpole electric trike. I built one for a guy who was losing the use of his legs, and he said, my mobility scooter doesn't go fast enough. I want something that goes a bit faster. He's had it a year, and he said it changed his life, giving him mobility, but it's not quite powerful enough to get him up some of the hills, so he wants me to add pedals to it. I had a guy contact me yesterday, and he wants me to build him a bendy bike, which is one of the bikes I take out that where it pivots in front of the seat as well as the handlebars. And his son quite liked the kangaroo bike, which is where the pedals go round together, which makes you look like a kangaroo. People find me on the internet and they go, looks like this guy might have the skills to build this particular bike I've been dreaming about.
And most of your ideas in building your bikes, do they come from mostly other people or from you or a bit of both?
Because I test a lot of my bikes on my friends, whenever they see anything bike related, they send me pictures, and if I can see pictures of something, I can build it. I listen to the kids, and one of my very first visits, I had a kid come up to me and says, you need a bike with a steering wheel. And I thought, that's a great idea. So now I've got a couple of bikes that use steering wheels instead of handlebars.
Yeah, I've seen them. What's your advice to 15-year-olds who are looking to get into employment?
I'm a big believer that the people that are going to make lots of money in the future are going to be tradesmen. Most of the tradesmen out there at the moment are coming up or closer to retirement age, and they're a lot of the company owners and the business owners. There's a lot less people learning to work with their hands, and if you can learn to work with your hands as a plumber or an electrician or an engineer or a welder or something like that, they're the people that are going to be the most valuable skills in the future. Yes, there's a lot of people out there trying to make money on the internet, and there's a few that do, but the world is run by people that can fix things.
Because you say like there's a lack in those.
There's a lack of people coming through the system to meet those jobs.
And do you know why that would be?
Yes, the focus is entirely on computers. And most kids and a lot of adults these days grow up on computers, and they're not used to actually physically building and fixing things with their hands. Once upon a time, every kid could hit a nail in with 3 or 4 hits of the hammer. These days, I'm guessing that maybe 10%.
Yeah.
It's such basic, simple skills and knowing how to use all those tools.
Do you feel like there's a loss, like generational kind of, like those are the things like my granddad would have done.
Yeah.
But then like my dad, he was just too busy in his 9 to 5 to teach me those. Like he knew them, but
Yeah.
or my brother, those things.
Yeah. I think it's just a desire. I don't see. I deal with a lot of young people, and only 10% of them can hold a good conversation. The other 80 to 90% of them are stuck on their phones. And while I use my phone a lot and I spend a lot of time on my computer, when I have company, it stays in my pocket. There's not a lot of that happening.
And that's also what's valuable, like about your business, like how you.
The comment I hear most often from the parents standing around watching their kids is it's great to see my kids off their devices as they stand there with their tablets and their phones taking pictures of them.
It's ironic.
Exactly.
Thank you for listening to Voices Unhindered. It's great hearing from my listeners. Reach out with questions and comments through Insta or Facebook. Just search for Voices Unhindered. I'm interested to know what other topics and voices you'd like me to bring on the show. Join me every Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. on Plains FM 96.9. You can find past episodes at plainsfm.org.nz and subscribe to Voices Unhindered on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to never miss an episode.